My name is Jonathan Poritz. I've retired from two careers over many years, one as a professor of mathematics and computer science, another in parallel working in various companies and research centers on cryptology, artificial intelligence, and quantum computation. These days, I think of myself as a gig worker in the open education movement.
And my name is Kathy Giuffre. I'm a retired professor of sociology. I spent 30 years researching and teaching about communities, networks, social movements, and collective action.
It often seems like today the world is going through a kind of slow apocalypse, with genocidal violence, devastating climate change, global pandemic, and on and on and on, all horribly exacerbated by an awful rightward trend in politics in so many nations. As people who want to do something to make the world a better place, we have found it hard not to despair. But then we remembered that our various careers and lives have given us tools which we find useful and which we hope may be useful to you as we try to resist the slide into dystopia. So what are we going to talk about today?
So we're clearly in this for the long haul. Things have started badly and are just getting worse, and nothing's going to be resolved very quickly. So there's a lot of energy in resisting fascism now, but what I want to talk about today is sustaining that over the course of the months and years to come, because this fight is not going to be short. And I want to start today with a quote from Dan Savage that I ran across a couple of months ago, and this is what it says. The next 4 years are going to suck, but they'll suck worse if we let the news cycle and the man who dominates it drain the joy from our lives. We need to pay attention and we need to stay in the fight, because of course we do. But we should spend as much time as we possibly can over the next 4 years with friends and lovers doing things that bring us joy. Anyone who tells you that making time for joy, however you define it, is a distraction or a betrayal has no idea what they're talking about. During the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, we buried our friends in the morning, we protested in the afternoon, and we danced all night. The dance kept us in the fight because it was the dance we were fighting for. It didn't look like we were going to win then, and we did. It doesn't feel like we're going to win now, but we could. Keep fighting, keep dancing.
Okay, that's a really good point. How do we put it into practice?
So I want to bring some things in today from a really amazing book called Protest, A Cultural Introduction to Social Movements by James M. Jasper. And actually, if people want to get this book, I highly recommend it. It's actually meant as an introductory level sociology book, but he really goes deeply into social movements and has all sorts of things about recruiting and engaging in movements, but also an important chapter that I'm going to draw from today about sustaining movements over the long haul. And this is one of the things he says. Organizers have to offer reasons for people to continue in their movements once they have been recruited. There must be satisfactions along the way, as well as an awareness of the ultimate prize at the end. These gratifications include pride in a new positive identity and the immediate enjoyments of protesting in large groups. Organizations and their leaders have to keep such incentives in mind if they are to accomplish anything. So I think this is really important because I've been hearing a lot of stuff and reading a lot of stuff lately in the media saying, oh, these big protests, they don't do anything. They're just for show. That marching in the streets isn't going to accomplish anything. That playing some protest song isn't going to accomplish anything. That wearing a pink pussy hat isn't going to accomplish anything. It is merely symbolic. And I want to push back against that and use Jasper to make an argument here that, in fact, a lot of what we see as merely symbolic is deeply important to sustaining a movement over the long haul.
Can you give us some specific examples?
Well, for example, protests, the important role of the protests themselves, even if they don't change the minds of the people who are being protested against. The dipshit in the White House may be off in his own little world, but the protest still matters, even if the people in power don't hear them or don't want to hear them. So let me read another quote from Jasper. But protests can also just be fun. Collective marching, singing, and shouting can be exhilarating, even when they entail some risk or fear. Large gatherings help relieve the tedium of routine activities such as writing letters, licking stamps, and making phone calls. Although this too can be fun depending on who you're doing it with. So Jasper's making the point here that we are going to have to sustain this for a long time. And that's going to entail a lot of grunt work, a lot of licking envelopes, making phone calls, writing letters to our congressional representatives, going door to door to get out the vote. A lot of that can be quite tedious. These moments of group exhilaration are important for sustaining these activities because they get everyone all charged up again. So even though people aren't necessarily listening to our voices, nevertheless, we're listening to our voices and we will keep it up.
So you mentioned a minute ago thinking about what the organizers need to do to sustain their movement, but what about the individuals thinking about this, living the reality of doing this resistance work themselves?
Right, so people who are living the resistance work need to be able to feel a sense of solidarity, get a sense of meaning, also have a sense of fun. There needs to be a group there, and it needs to be something that they can take pride in. Being part of this is something that you're proud to show to the world that you're a member of this. So let me give another example from Jasper. People keep the good mood going a little longer by taking souvenirs with them. Objects they can show to others that remind them of a special event. Videos are commonplace today, just as photos were a generation ago. T-shirts are pervasive. They're not only a souvenir, but an advertisement to others, and a way to increase the look and feel of solidarity among a crowd in an event itself. A sea of yellow or pink proves the solidarity of a group. So this is something that bonds people together and makes people feel like they're part of something larger than themselves. Certainly one of the key things that totalitarian wants us to feel is isolated and alone. It wants us to feel that what we're doing is futile. It wants us to feel that we are on our own here. And that's part of the gaslighting that's going on now with this regime in Washington, is that everything's great and everyone loves what's going on, and you are the one person in the world who doesn't like having your Social Security destroyed, who doesn't like having your health care taken from you, who doesn't like having your bodily autonomy stripped from you. But part of the gaslighting is to make you feel alone. So some of these visual reminders that you are not alone are a really effective pushback against the gaslighting that says you are alone. Totalitarians want you to feel like you are the isolate, that you're the only one doing this. The visual reminders are things that make us feel like maybe I'm not alone. And that's why we see a lot of the propaganda coming out of the regime in Washington right now says that, oh, these are all just paid protesters. They don't want anyone to believe that people would actually take to the streets. They want you to feel like, oh no, no one is doing this. To not believe the evidence of your own eyes. In fact, that tens, hundreds of thousands of people are protesting what's going on. But the gaslighting needs you to say, no, 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 everyone loves it except for you.
What you're saying reminds me of, I've heard dismissive comments from Fox News and the right-wing commentariat about how people went to a protest and all they have is that pussy hat. And that's the extent of their protest activity. People are wearing T-shirts, and all they have is the T-shirt. They don't have anything further. But what you're saying is that the memorabilia, the T-shirts, is a way of both showing to other people that you are proud of what you're doing and also giving you joy as you are moving forward in this hard work. And, maybe putting on that T-shirt as it gets used and used again and more tattered is a sign of the time you are spending in this movement and working to make the world a better place. And we should dismiss the right-wing commentators. In fact, the fact that these commentators are dismissive is a sign perhaps that they're scared of us, and that us showing that we have solidarity by wearing a T-shirt or a hat and getting joy out of doing that is a good thing. It's building us into more of a community.
Absolutely. And remember, community is the stake in the heart of the vampire of fascism. Community is what will save us. And so these things that are dismissed as mere show are in fact an important part of community building. And the things that are dismissed as, oh, just a fun afternoon, the fun afternoon is an important thing. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us. A lot of it is going to be really tedious. every human being needs some of this joy, some of this fun, some of this friendship and exhilaration to keep us in the movement.
That's all well and good, but what does this feeling of community and this feeling of individual joy do us when things get really tough and there's a lot of serious sacrifices that people have to make to keep moving forward?
So I think that what you're talking about here is how do you maintain loyalty to a cause when you're asked to sacrifice for it? And again, the sociological literature seems to indicate that people are loyal to causes in groups. They're loyal to causes when they feel solidarity with other people in that group, when they feel that they have a place there and they belong. Here's another quote from Jasper. Groups try hard to arouse loyalties in members so that they enjoy being with the group, so that the membership is part of their identity, so that they like or love other members, are proud of what the group does, trust it to make the right decisions, and adopt the right tactics. In a word, they have an organizational collective identity. So this issue of trust, the issue of making sure that you will have loyalty when the going gets rough, that doesn't happen by isolated people having to make decisions all by themselves. That happens when we're in a situation of social support so that we can depend on each other, so that we know we're not out on the end of the branch alone, just waiting for someone to saw that branch off. We know that we're all together in this. That's why they want to keep us isolated, because that is so dangerous to them.
You're reminding me of the famous comment of one of the original demons of this moment in history, Margaret Thatcher, who said there is no such thing as society, there are only individuals, right? She's trying to atomize us so that we cannot be together and we cannot have a group identity that is the source of strength that helps us resist fascism.
Yeah, so Margaret Thatcher was a very effective leader for her brand of right-wing fascism in Great Britain because she inspired people to follow her rather hateful and, quite frankly, economically disastrous policies. So another question that comes up in this is, where do we find the inspiring leader who is going to mobilize everyone, who's going to bring everyone together? We recruited people into this movement. We're sustaining this movement. Who's driving this movement? So here's one final quote from Jasper about leaders. They may be a symbol to members of the movement, to outside audiences, or to both. Symbolic leaders embody what a movement is fighting for and how. Gandhi was a powerful symbol of nonviolent resistance to imperialism, embodying in his clothes, his posture, and his tiny size a fighter who was frail yet tough, an underdog who would endure. As the novelist John Dos Passos said of the socialist leader Eugene Debs, he, quote, made them want the world he wanted. So that's what we're looking for now, is a leader, a symbolic leader who can show us where we need to go with this movement and with all this energy. We need some direction here. But we often find that there's a sort of dismissiveness of people who may want to lead the movement.
Absolutely dismissiveness. Think about the dismissive reactions that even the Democratic Party has had towards really, I think, courageous, great leaders that we've had. Bernie Sanders and AOC have been treated so dismissively and have brought together crowds as they move around the country resisting the current regime, and I think they are great examples.
Yeah, they're absolutely great examples, and you're exactly right that they have been treated so dismissively, including by the Democratic Party. To just give another example of someone who's been really inspiring, just recently is Senator Cory Booker, who, as you know, spoke for 25 hours and 5 minutes on the Senate floor, breaking the record previously held by Strom Thurmond, who in 1957 spoke against the passage of the Civil Rights Act. And I think one of the amazing things is often when people do these long speeches or filibusters on the floor of governing bodies, they're just filling up time. So they do things like read the phone book or read children's books like Green Eggs and Ham. And I think one of the really inspiring things about Senator Booker was he didn't do any of that. He actually spoke for 25 hours really substantively. And through that, he came up with several really, I think, powerful quotes. So I'm just going to put a few of them up here because there are so many to choose from. One was, he said, if America hasn't broken your heart, then you don't love her enough. Another thing he said is, this is a moral moment. This is not left or right. This is right or wrong. And finally, one that I think people are using all the time is appearing on placards and protests and things. The power of the people is stronger than the people in power. So there are lots of people in the commentariat who said, oh, it was just a speech and it didn't do anything and it didn't affect any legislation. And people even said, oh, he was just grandstanding. And I want to push back against that and say that they completely misunderstand what a symbolic leader does, which is make people want the world that they want.
That's so beautiful and powerful. It makes me think of Martin Luther King. I have a dream. He wanted a thing. He had a dream. And by his courage and by his actions, he made people want that world that he was dreaming of. So what are some things that we can actually do?
Okay, number one has got to be keep building those communities. Community is the answer to this. Make sure that you're engaging with communities. Make sure that you keep involved and do not allow yourself to become isolated. Number two, have fun with this. This does not have to be a grim slog through despair. These people who are in charge are awful, horrible, terrible people. They're trying to make our lives as grim and as bitter as they can be. Don't let them win. Don't let them suck the joy out of our lives. Remember when we talked about weapons of the week, laughing at them is one of the most effective things you can do. But also just laugh with joy at others. Remember to appreciate this moment of solidarity with others. And a third thing is, if you're participating in protests, if you're participating in the movement in any way, wear your t-shirt, wear your pink pussy hat, take your selfie, enjoy this moment, because that is not frivolous. What that does is say, this is real, people are participating in it, we are not alone. So don't let anyone tell you that having fun with being part of this movement is something that you shouldn't do. As Emma Goldman said, probably apocryphally, if I can't dance, it's not my revolution.
That's beautiful. I'm going to go knit myself a pussy out.
You do it, baby. As always, if you would like more information, it's on our website at therevolutionwillnotbetelevised.net.